welcome to the Classroom Collection. I'm Ernie Brooks, president of Brooks Institute of Photography, Santa Barbara, California. Our voyage begins today on the research vessel Just Love, part of our undersea photographic technology program at the Institute. And your voyage to a full understanding of our magnificent profession is about to unfold.
You know how much I spent with you, sir. I don't mean to take you out of the video.
This tape includes information dealing with film speeds, apertures,
What's the politics section?
and shutter speeds. When photographing a subject like skateboard champion Tony Hawk, the shutter speed is the main camera control which should be considered. Brooks Institute faculty member John Dark discusses shutter speeds.
The shutter speed on your camera, it's one of the most important controls that you have. Understanding this control gives you the ability to make different photographs out of the same situation. How effectively you control your shutter speeds will determine how you might make the viewer's perception of your photographs different. For example, I photographed world skateboard champion Tony Hawk, who is known for his speed and his aerial freestyle abilities. Now, in order to stop Tony Hawk, I had to use an extremely fast shutter speed, like 1,000th, and sometimes even a 2,000th of a second. However, if you freeze his action, Tony Hawk might look like he's standing on the board instead of riding it. His sponsor, Palo Peralta, they like this kind of a photograph because everybody can see the logo on the bottom of the board. The disadvantage of a fast shutter speed in a situation like this is that the subject tends to lose that feeling of action and the feeling of motion. And Tony's famous for that kind of stuff. A slower shutter speed would have allowed Tony to be slightly more blurred on the film, which could give the viewer a better feeling of speed and action. A slower shutter speed in an action photograph of this type could enhance the photograph.
These images illustrate more examples where the camera's shutter speed was the most important element of control. The next camera control we will examine is the lens aperture. Brooks instructor Dave Litchell explains.
The aperture on a camera is a series of metal leaves that fits in the lens. And those leaves open and close to let more or less light into the camera. Well, you know what? They're an amazing mechanical reproduction of what goes on in the iris diaphragm, or the iris of the eye. When you walk into a dark room, your eye opens up to let more light in so you can see in that dark space. And when you walk out of that dark room into the white light of day, it hits your eye and causes it to become very bright, causing your iris to stop down. Well, that's the same thing that happens when you close down the aperture in your camera. Those metal leaves come together and form a small opening. Each one of these openings has a standard number assigned to it. It's universal the world throughout, and each full f-stop number, which is what they're called, is exactly doubling or halving the amount of light from the next adjacent whole f-stop number.
The numbers which Dave referred to are generally located on your camera's lens and will usually range from 2.8 to 32.
If you've ever noticed, when you have a very large f-stop, the number is very small. If you have a very small opening on your f-stop, the number is very big. And why is that? Well, it's actually pretty easy. If you take a look at the inside of a camera, and if I say that this is the center of the lens looking at the camera from its side, and this is the film plane, then we can say that if I had a lens that had an f1, the diameter of that lens, the opening of the f-stop, would fit into that distance from the center of the lens to the film plane one time. f2 would fit in there twice. f4 would fit in there 4 times. f8 would fit in there 8 times, and so on. And if we got an f-stop number that was fairly large, like f22, you'd see 22 little bitty diameters fitting within that distance from the center of the lens to the film plane.
Rob Winner explains the importance of understanding camera apertures and a concept called depth of field.
I'd like to take a few moments today to talk to you about apertures and a concept we call depth of field. Let's pretend for a moment that you are going to take a photograph of me. You take out your camera, carefully focus your lens on, say, my glasses. If you had that resulting photograph developed, you would find that not only would my glasses be sharp, but a certain amount of area in front of my glasses, say the tip of my nose, as well as a certain amount of area behind my glasses, say my ears, would also be sharp. This area in front of and behind the actual point of focus is called depth of field. Depth of field is directly controlled by the aperture on your camera. A very small aperture will yield a very large depth of field, or more area in your photograph will be sharp. A very wide aperture will yield a very small depth of field, or a very small area being sharp in your photograph. Now, generally speaking, depth of field runs 1/3 in front of the actual point of focus and 2/3 behind your subject. Depth of field can be used creatively in a couple of different ways. Let's take, for example, this scene that we have here overlooking the harbor. If we were to take that photograph and we wanted both our subject matter standing here on the bluff as well as the harbor in sharp focus, we would need a very small aperture to control our depth of field, or to give us a very large amount of depth of field. On the other hand, if we wanted to take more of a portrait type photograph where all the emphasis was on our subject, then we'd use a very large aperture, say f5.6 or f4 on the camera, and that would minimize the focus on our background and draw all the attention to our subject. In this fashion, we can direct attention in our photographs very effectively and very creatively.
These images all have one thing in common. The selected aperture, or f-stop number, is the camera control responsible for the success of the photograph. Most cameras have adjustable apertures. This includes 35mm cameras such as this Nikon, medium format cameras like Hasselblad, and even large format view cameras such as this Sinar. Many cameras automatically adjust the aperture as well as the shutter speed for correct exposure. These cameras are designed to take pictures fast without the need for making adjustments due to varying light conditions. The next section of this tape deals with film speeds available and their different uses.
Films are designed with varying sensitivities to light. Some films are more sensitive to light, other films less sensitive. This sensitivity is referred to as a film speed. Faster or more sensitive films are designed to be used in very low light levels or when the subject matter is moving very quickly. Slower or less sensitive films are designed to be used in normal or bright light levels or when the subject may not be moving at all, such as in a still life. The designations for these film speeds are set by an international body and are referred to as the film's ISO. In a normal lighting situation like this, we have bright sun, no clouds. I'm going to choose a film that has a medium to slow ISO. Ektachrome 64, Kodachrome 25, T-Max 100. All of these films would render this scene well. So as you can see, the lighting environment and the speed of the subject dictate which film you choose.
A night photograph is an example of a scene which would call for a fast film, one with a high ISO number. Ralph discusses taking pictures at night.
High-speed films are designed to give us sharp images in low-light situations. You got to remember, you don't want to use a slow film when there isn't much light. You're going to get blurry pictures. So give yourself a challenge. Take a high-speed film and go out and find low-light situations. Try shooting in candlelight. Try shooting in a room that's lit by only one bulb. Try going out at night and shooting a building. See what you can do with your high-speed films.
In contrast to high-speed films, slower films have an equally important purpose. Many times, slow films can be used when you are photographing a subject which is not moving, and a slow shutter speed is not a major concern. All of these images were taken utilizing film with a low ISO number. The ability to control shutter speeds and apertures and to select the correct film speed, or ISO, will help you not only take better photographs, but also give you the confidence necessary to experiment with new ideas and techniques.